It was 2 in the morning when I brought my drunk CEO home. The door was opened by an old man whose arms were covered in tattoos. I swallowed hard, recognizing him as the legendary tough guy, the one people whispered about. "Drop her there. You can get lost," he said, his voice like ice. I just turned to leave when he barked, "Hold it. Turn around." My first thought was that I was about to get the beating of my life. I turned back, trembling. But the old man just stared at my face, and then a slow, wide grin spread across his lips. 01, my name is Jack Rivers, and I am a profoundly unremarkable corporate drone. Right now, I'm being dragged into a legendary mansion in a profoundly bizarre manner by a guy built like a brick shithouse, all tattooed arms and heavy gold chains. Behind me, the company's Ice Queen CEO, my boss, Claire Sterling, is sprawled on a priceless leather sofa like a sack of potatoes, muttering about KPIs and next quarter's budget. And in front of me, the retired kingpin who could make the entire Chicago business world tremble. Claire's father, Frank the Mountain Sterling, is staring at me with eyes that gleam. It's not the look you give a future son-in-law or an enemy. It's the look you give a perfectly cooked, medium-rare steak. "Make yourself at home, kid." Frank's hand, the size of a catcher's mitt, clapped down on my shoulder. I swear I felt my collarbone rattle. I managed a smile that felt more like a grimace, my eyes darting around the mansion. The decor was old-school masculine, all dark mahogany, leather, and the faint, sweet smell of cigar smoke and whiskey. The most prominent feature was a massive, taxidermy grizzly bear reared up on its hind legs in the entryway, its glass eyes staring down with silent menace. My mind instantly flashed through 100 mob movies. Scenes of concrete shoes and sleeping with the fishes. Am I going to end up as bait tonight? What are you waiting for? Follow me. Frank didn't give my overactive imagination a chance to spin out, yanking me deeper into the house. We passed the living room and came to a massive, custom-built aquarium. Inside, a single, enormous channel catfish hovered, its whiskers twitching lazily. It had to be pushing 50 pounds, its sleek, dark scales shimmering under the recessed lighting. And that fish was the beginning of this whole mess. 2 weeks ago, I was fishing at a quiet spot on the riverfront after work. I ran into this old guy with top-of-the-line gear who, technically speaking, sucked. He kept snagging his line on the bottom. I couldn't help myself. I gave him a few pointers, helped him adjust his rig, and even gave him some of my homemade stink bait. And what do you know, the guy lands this once-in-a-decade monster of a catfish. He was so thrilled he insisted on getting my number, saying he owed me a home-cooked meal. I figured it was just talk. I had no idea life was about to get this weird. "That's him," Frank said, pointing at the catfish with a look of pure, paternal pride. "You said a monster like this needs to be blackened, with a special blend of Cajun spices to kill that muddy taste." He turned to me, his eyes sharp and intense. "Tonight, you're going to show me how it's done." My scalp prickled. "Dude, it's 2:30 in the morning. Your daughter is passed out drunk on the couch, and you're dragging her subordinate into your kitchen to cook a fish? Is this some kind of new age initiation?" "Sir, Mr. Sterling, it's really late. Maybe another time." I tried. "No." Frank's eyes narrowed. "Gotta eat him fresh. We're doing this now." His tone left zero room for argument. I felt like one more word of protest, and he'd pull a meat cleaver out from behind his back. "Wretch." An unpleasant sound came from the sofa. We both turned. Claire was struggling to sit up, her face pale. It looked like she was about to ruin a very expensive antique rug. Frank scrambled over like a clumsy bear, hovering uselessly. "Claire Bear, what's wrong? You need some water?" "Dad'll get you some water." The same hands that could probably crush a skull couldn't figure out how to operate a water pitcher. I sighed and walked over, resigned to my fate. "Easy there, Miss Sterling." I expertly pulled a wastebasket from under the end table and placed it in front of her, then poured a glass of water. "Rinse your mouth out. Then sip this. You'll feel better." Claire looked at me, her eyes unfocused, but she did as she was told. After she was done and had collapsed back onto the sofa, I took a napkin and gently wiped her mouth. The whole time, Frank just stood there, watching me in silence. When I finished and straightened up, I met his gaze. The intimidating glare was gone, replaced by a strange, unreadable flicker of amusement. "All right, forget about her. She'll live," Frank grunted, waving a dismissive hand before grabbing my arm again. "Come on, Time to cook the fish. I had officially given up on fighting it. The Sterling kitchen was bigger than my entire apartment, decked out with professional grade, stainless steel, everything. Frank netted the giant catfish from the tank and slapped it onto a massive butcher block island. The tail gave a final, resounding thwack that made me jump. Here you go, kid. Your weapon. He handed me a gleaming chef's knife. I looked at the still gasping fish, then at Frank's expectant face, and took a deep breath. Fine. It's just cleaning a fish. As a lifelong angler, I knew what I was doing. Scaling, gutting, filleting, I moved with practiced efficiency. Frank watched from the side, making impressed noises. Not bad, kid. You got some skills. You fish enough, you figure it out, I said modestly. As I worked, we started talking. That girl of mine, Frank sighed suddenly. She's a handful. All work, no play. She's pushing 30 and hasn't brought a single guy home. The ones I set her up with, she says they're all soft. Says those trust fund kids probably couldn't even bait their own hook. My hands paused. That was a new one. Judging potential partners by their fishing prowess. That Kensington kid, what's his name? Chad. He's been sniffing around the most lately. Frank sneered, looking thoroughly unimpressed. Him? Skinny punk, looks like a light breeze could knock him over. I could break him in half. He wants to marry my daughter? In his dreams. Chad Kensington? My stomach dropped. That was the smarmy heir to our company's biggest investor, the guy who was constantly hitting on Claire and making my life hell at every opportunity. Small world. The fish hit the hot pan, and a rich, spicy aroma soon filled the kitchen. I used the secret recipe I'd bragged about, adding a splash of beer and my own spice blend. Frank leaned in for a sniff, his eyes lighting up. Damn, that smells incredible. Once the fish was cooked, he pulled a bottle of what looked like Pappy Van Winkle from a cabinet and poured 2 very generous glasses. Here, have a drink with me. Mr. Sterling, I'm not much of a drinker. You are tonight. You impressed me, kid. You drink this. Looking into those eyes, I knew refusal wasn't an option. I picked up the glass. The bourbon slid down my throat like liquid fire. Just then, a cool voice came from the kitchen doorway. What are you two doing? I turned. Claire was leaning against the door frame, mostly sober now but still looking drained. She stared at me in an apron, then at her father, who was enthusiastically piling a piece of fish onto my plate. Her brow furrowed in suspicion. Her expression was a mixture of judgment and contempt, like she was looking at a pathetic suck-up who'd stooped to anything to get ahead, even cozying up to the boss's father in his own home. My heart sank. Game over. There was no explaining my way out of this. Claire Bear, you're up. Frank, on the other hand, was delighted. Come try this. Jack's a genius in the kitchen. Dad. Claire's voice was sharp with annoyance. Do you know what time it is? And you're keeping my employee here, making him drink with you. She turned her icy gaze on me. Jack, the fish is cooked. The bourbon is poured. You can leave now. It was a direct order of dismissal. I put down my fork and stood up awkwardly. Yes, Miss Sterling. Leave? Who said he's leaving? Frank slammed his fork down. I'm not done yet. Claire, what's gotten into you? Jack is my guest. Is that any way to talk to a guest? Your guest. Claire let out a cold laugh. Dad, don't let him fool you. Isn't it obvious what he's trying to do? A junior employee, driving me home in the middle of the night, then weaseling his way into our kitchen to play chef. I opened my mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Would you believe we met because of fishing? Would you believe your dad forced me to cook for him? You shut your mouth. Frank roared, slamming his hand on the table so hard the plates jumped. I think being a CEO has made you stupid. Jack is a friend of mine. He's my fishing buddy. What the hell do you know? Claire was stunned into silence, clearly having never seen her father defend an outsider like this. Frank whipped out his phone, opened WhatsApp, and shoved it in my face. Here, Jack, add me. My hands fumbled as I scanned the QR code. A second later, a notification popped up. I glanced at the screen. Frank had saved my contact name as Fishing Guru. I was speechless. Next time you want to go fishing, you text me direct. Frank beamed at me. Don't listen to this girl. She doesn't appreciate real talent. I held my phone like it was a hot potato. Under Claire's murderous glare, I practically fled the mansion. Stepping outside, the cold pre-dawn air hit me, and I shivered. I looked back at the brightly lit house and made a silent vow. I was never, ever getting involved with this bizarre father-daughter duo again. 02. The next day, I showed up to the office with two giant dark circles under my eyes. The moment I walked in, I could feel it. The atmosphere was different. Everyone's eyes were darting toward me, filled with a mix of gossip and intrigue. In the break room, a few colleagues were whispering, "Did you hear? Jack was the one who took Miss Sterling home last night." No way. I didn't even think they knew each other's names. I saw it with my own eyes. After the company dinner, she was wasted, and he helped her into the Uber. Whoa, is it a secret office romance? I never would have guessed. Jack's so quiet. How'd he manage to land our ice queen? Secret romance. More like he's a gold digger trying to sleep his way to the top. My hand, holding my coffee mug, froze. I quietly backed out of the break room. Rumors always travel faster than the truth. Before I could even get to my desk, my office phone rang. "Jack, my office." Now, it was Claire's voice, as cool and unreadable as ever. I took a deep breath and walked into the familiar executive suite. Claire was sitting behind her desk, dressed in a sharp power suit. Once again, the untouchable CEO. She pulled a document from her drawer and slid it across the desk to me. "Sign it." I looked down. The title was in bold letters, Non-Disclosure Agreement. The contents were simple. I was to remain completely silent about the events of last night, never revealing a single detail to anyone, under penalty of a lawsuit that would bankrupt me and my future grandchildren. My heart sank. "Ms. Sterling, what exactly do you think I was trying to accomplish by talking to your father?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "What do I think?" Claire leaned back in her chair, a sarcastic smirk on her lips. "A promotion? A raise? Or did you think that by getting close to my father, you'd hit the jackpot?" "I tried to explain last night," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I met your father because of fishing." "That's it. Fishing." She laughed as if I'd told the funniest joke in the world. "Jack, do you really expect me to believe that? My father, aside from my mother, has never given a damn about anyone. Why would he suddenly take a liking to a junior employee he just met? Because I'm the fishing guru." I screamed internally, but I knew it was useless. To her, it sounded completely absurd. "Believe it or not, it's the truth," I said, picking up the pen and signing my name. "Don't worry, I won't say a word." Just then, the office door was thrown open. A figure swaggered in without knocking. It was Chad Kensington. He was wearing an obnoxious pink blazer, his hair slicked back with too much gel. Seeing me in the office, his face immediately twisted into a sneer. Well, if it isn't the knight in shining armor." He walked right up to Claire's desk and casually placed a bouquet of roses on it. "Claire, honey, why'd you leave so early last night? I was looking all over for you." Claire's brow twitched. "Mr. Kensington, please call me Ms. Sterling. And in the future, please knock." "Oh, come on, we're all friends here. No need to be so formal." Chad waved her objection away, his eyes landing on me again. He looked me up and down, his malice practically dripping off him. "You, go get me a coffee." From that little artisanal place 3 blocks down, Starlight. Hand-pulled espresso, no sugar. It was a blatant power play, meant to humiliate me. I stood my ground, my fists clenching at my sides. Claire spoke up, her voice sharp. "Mr. Kensington, Jack is my employee, not your errand boy. Your employee works for the company, and we're the investors, aren't we?" Chad shot back with a sleazy grin. "Claire, about that new green energy project. My father isn't too keen on it. But if you could make him happy, well, maybe he'd change his mind." He let the threat hang in the air. Claire's expression soured. Her lips parted, but in the end, she said nothing. I got it. For the sake of the company, she had to tolerate him. The flicker of anger in my chest was doused with cold reality. Whatever. I could take it. "Right away, Mr. Kensington," I said, forcing a smile before turning to leave. I heard his triumphant chuckle behind me. I walked the 3 blocks and bought the stupid artisanal espresso. When I got back to the office, Chad was leaning over Claire's desk. As I passed him, he accidentally stuck out his elbow. The scalding coffee splashed all over the back of my hand. A searing pain shot through my skin, which was already turning an angry red. "Oh, my bad," Chad exclaimed with theatrical surprise, though his face held zero remorse. "Why don't you watch where you're going?" He pulled out a silk pocket square and delicately dabbed at a few drops on his blazer. "Some people just don't belong in this world. Don't think that just because you drove the boss home once, you've suddenly made it." He didn't say it loudly, but it was just loud enough for the entire open-plan office to hear. Every pair of eyes was on me. Some looked sympathetic, some mocking, some contemptuous. I felt like a clown on stage, stripped bare for everyone to gawk at. Claire shot to her feet, her face livid. "Chadwick, that's enough." "What did I do?" He held up his hands in mock innocence. "I'm just speaking the truth. Claire, you need to be careful. Guys like this, who try to use women to get ahead, they're the most pathetic of all." I didn't say a word. I just quietly picked up the empty cup from the floor, grabbed a cloth, and began wiping up the spill. The burn on my hand throbbed, but it was nothing compared to the sting of humiliation. I could feel Claire's gaze on me, complicated and unreadable. But I didn't look up. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Frank Sterling. I opened it. A voice note. I pressed play, and Frank's booming, enthusiastic voice filled the oppressive silence of the office. "Hey kid, you up for some night fishing? Found a killer spot." The voice cut through the tension like a fresh breeze, carrying the scent of damp earth and river water, and instantly washing away the gloom in my heart. I looked down at the screen, at the contact named Fishing Guru, and a small, defiant smile touched my lips. "Chad Kensington, you just wait." 03 The riverbank at night was a world away from the city's daytime chaos, filled only with the rustle of wind through the reeds and the occasional croak of a frog. I sat on my folding stool, my rod arcing through the darkness as the weighted lure landed with a soft plunk exactly where I wanted it. The bobber danced for a moment, then plunged underwater. I jerked my wrist back, setting the hook. Hard. A fat bluegill flew out of the water, sailing through the air in a silver arc before landing unceremoniously in the grass behind me. I showed it no mercy, unhooking it, rebaiting, and casting out again. Cast after cast. I channeled all the frustration and anger from my day into those unsuspecting fish. I imagined every single one I reeled and was Chad Kensington's smug, punchable face. My keep net was already heavy. Frank Sterling sat beside me, an unlit cigar clamped in his teeth, watching in stunned silence. "Kid," he finally said, "you're fishing with some serious aggression tonight." I didn't answer, just hauled in another half-pound crappie without even using the net. Frank looked at my overflowing net, then at his own empty bucket, and shook his head in awe. "Damn, you're pro. It's a crime you're not on the tournament circuit." He leaned closer, and his eyes fell on the gauze wrapped around my hand. "What happened to your hand?" "Nothing. Just burned it by accident," I said dismissively. "Accident?" Frank wasn't buying it. He grabbed my wrist, pushed up my sleeve, and saw the angry red blisters underneath the dressing. His expression turned dark. "Who did it?" His voice was quiet, but it held a chilling edge. After a moment of silence, I told him the truth. "Chad Kensington. Kensington Sr. Kid." Frank let out a cold laugh, a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. "Old man Kensington used to have to bow and scrape just to get a meeting with me. Now his son has the balls to mess with one of my guys." He pulled out his phone, ready to make a call. "Frank, don't," I said, stopping him. "What, you scared of him?" "Not scared," I said, watching the moonlight ripple on the water. "This is a work thing. I want to handle it myself." I paused, then added, "An angler has his pride. But if the opportunity comes up," I continued, "I want to be the one to show him what happens when you underestimate the competition." Frank looked at me, a newfound respect in his eyes. He put his phone away and clapped me on the shoulder again. "Good man. You've got grit. I knew I liked you. All right, you handle it your way. But you remember, I got your back. You go in there and do what you have to do. Don't be afraid to break things." At that moment, a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in this massive, lonely city, I felt like someone truly had my back. We talked late into the night about everything from fishing techniques to our dreams for the future. Frank told me that the Kensingtons were desperately trying to buy a piece of land he owned, a piece of land that was critical for their new green energy project. "Already signed that property over to Claire," Frank said with a sly grin. "On paper, the decision is hers." He looked me straight in the eye. "But between you and me, I'm only listening to your advice on this one." My heart skipped a beat. I was holding Chad Kensington's future in my hands. As I was leaving, Frank pulled a sleek, black card from his wallet and pressed it into my hand. "Take it." "Frank, what's this?" It's a black card. No limit, no pin, he said, stuffing it into my pocket. Go buy yourself some decent gear. You're my fishing guru. You can't be making me look bad with cheap rods. I held the thin piece of plastic, and it felt heavier than gold. Back in my tiny apartment, even the burn on my hand didn't seem to hurt as much. I looked out at the city lights, and for the first time, I felt like I was finally playing a home game. Chad Kensington. The game is on. 04. The annual Sterling Enterprises corporate gala was a sea of designer dresses and expensive suits. I, Jack Rivers, stood in a corner in a rented tux, trying my best to be invisible. I hadn't wanted to come, but Claire had called me personally. Her reason was as simple as it was insulting. You can hold your liquor. I need you to run interference for me. Fine. Human shield it is. Claire was breathtaking tonight in a silver gown that shimmered like moonlight, making her look even more like an untouchable queen. She was, without a doubt, the center of attention, including the predatory attention of Chad Kensington. Chad and his father were both here, obviously to press their advantage on the land deal. Chad buzzed around Claire like a persistent fly, a swarm she expertly and repeatedly evaded. It didn't take long for him to find me. Well, look what we have here. You can put a monkey in a suit, but it's still a monkey, he sneered, cornering me with a few of his rich kid friends. Heard you've been getting pretty cocky. Even managed to trick Claire's old man. You're mistaken, Mr. Kensington, I said, my face a blank mask. Oh, cut the crap. Chad picked up a bottle of wine from a server's tray. It was a Romanicani, the kind of wine that costs more than my car. You chug this entire bottle right now, and I'll let bygones be bygones. His friends started jeering. Drink it. What are you scared? Don't be a wimp. I saw Claire glance over, a flicker of concern in her eyes. I sighed internally. For her. So she wouldn't have to deal with this harassment. I picked up a glass and raised it to Chad. An honor, Mr. Kensington. I tipped my head back and poured the wine down my throat. One glass, then another, then a third. My stomach was on fire. But I stood straight, my gaze clear. Chad's face soured. He clearly hadn't expected me to call his bluff. Just then, his father, Kensington Sr., approached Claire with a greasy smile. Claire, my dear, Chad is just being a boy. Don't mind him. Now about that Southside property. His tone shifted, becoming hard. As soon as you and my Chad set a wedding date, he said, applying the pressure, the Kensington Corporation will buy that land at a premium and will increase our investment in your company by 20%. Otherwise, well, you know how nervous the other shareholders are about your new projects. It was blatant blackmail. Claire's face went white. She stood there, completely alone. All the senior executives who usually orbited her were now pretending to be fascinated by the wallpaper. This was the cold, hard reality of the world she lived in. Chad seized his moment, stepping forward to wrap an arm around her waist. You see, Claire, we're perfect for each other. Marry me, and you'll never have to worry about a thing. The crowd of sycophants started to applaud. Say yes. Say yes. Claire struggled, her eyes turning red at the edges. In that moment, she wasn't an Ice Queen CEO. She was just a young woman, trapped. And something inside me snapped. I strode forward and shoved Chad away from her. Don't touch her. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. The entire gala went silent. Chad stumbled back, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. Who the hell do you think you are? You put your hands on me. He swung, aiming a slap at my face. I didn't flinch. I caught his wrist in a vice grip. I'm not a big guy, but he couldn't break free. My eyes were cold, cold enough to make him hesitate. What are you doing? Security, get this psycho away from me. Chad yelled, his bravado crumbling. Security guards immediately started moving in. A brawl was about to break out. Claire closed her eyes in despair. I could feel the guards grabbing my arms, starting to haul me away. And then my phone rang. The ringtone was an aggressive, thumping blast of electric guitar, instantly recognizable to anyone who'd listened to rock radio in the last 40 years. B bad. Bad to the bone. It was a custom ringtone Frank Sterling had set for himself. The entire room froze, stunned by the sudden blast of George Thorogood. Chad pointed a trembling finger at my face. Are you kidding me? You think now's a good time to take a call? You have no idea who you're messing with. I shook one arm free from a guard, and in front of everyone, I answered the call, hitting speakerphone and switching to video call. A second later, Frank Sterling's heavily tattooed face filled the screen. He was sitting in a boat, the night sky behind him. "Jack, my boy, where the hell are you? I've been chumming the water for an hour. The big ones are starting to bite." Frank's voice boomed through the ballroom's sound system. Dead silence. Chad was still screaming. "Who the hell is this old geezer? Hang up on him." Smack. A loud, sharp crack echoed through the room. It wasn't me. It was Kensington Sr., who had just slapped his own son across the face with all his might. The man was shaking. "Shut your mouth. That's Mr. Sterling." Chad was stunned, holding his cheek. Kensington Sr., after getting a clear look at the man on my phone screen, turned as white as a sheet. Mr. Sterling," he stammered. On the screen, Frank had now gotten a good look at the scene via my phone's camera. He saw me being held by security, the spilled wine, Chad's furious face, and his daughter's pale, distressed one. His friendly expression evaporated, replaced by a cold, quiet rage. "Kensington," Frank's voice was dangerously calm, carrying a weight that crushed the air out of the room. "Your boy has gotten bold. He's bullying my friend, and he's trying to strong-arm my daughter." Kensington Sr. S. knees buckled. He practically fell to the floor, bowing to the phone. "Frank, it's a misunderstanding. A complete misunderstanding. I didn't know. My son is an idiot." Claire was staring at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Her brain had clearly short-circuited. As for me, I just gave the phone a casual smile. "Hey, Frank, this party's a drag. I'm on my way. Save a big one for me." Then, under the terrified, awestruck, and utterly baffled gazes of everyone in the room, I straightened my rented tux and strolled out of the gala. Behind me, I heard Kensington Sr. begin to scream at his son in a rage, followed by a pathetic, strangled yelp. The air outside had never smelled so sweet. I'd barely stepped out of the hotel when a red Porsche screeched to a halt in front of me. The window rolled down to reveal Claire's face, still etched with shock. "Get in." Her tone was not a request. I slid into the passenger seat. The silence in the car was thick with unspoken questions. She drove fast, the city's neon lights streaking across my face. What kind of spell did you cast on my father?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. I leaned back against the leather seat, looked at her tense profile, and found the situation absurdly funny. "I told you. I taught him how to rig a line and what bait to use. Would you believe me now?" "Rig a line? Bait?" The words were foreign to her, meaningless. I sighed and told her the whole story. The chance meeting on the riverbank, me helping untangle his line, giving him my secret weapon bait, him landing the monster catfish. The simple, unadulterated story of two fishermen becoming friends. When I finished, Claire was silent. She pulled the car over by the riverfront and killed the engine. The only sound was our breathing. "My father. He's never been like that with an outsider," she said softly, her voice filled with a disoriented wonder. "He's hot-tempered, suspicious. He doesn't trust anyone. So many people have tried to get close to him over the years, and he's shut every single one of them down." She turned and looked at me, her gaze intense and searching. "What is it about you?" Under that stare, for the first time, I saw that the powerful CEO was also just a daughter trying to understand her own father. "There's nothing special about me," I said with a shrug. "Maybe. It's just the universal brotherhood of the angler." Grumble. An undignified growl broke the charged atmosphere. It came from Claire's stomach. A faint blush crept up her neck as she quickly looked away. I grinned. "Come on, Miss Sterling. Let me buy you a taco." I took her to a food truck I frequented, parked in a nondescript lot under a highway overpass. The owner, a cheerful guy named Manny, saw me and broke into a wide smile. "Hey, Jack. Back again. Is this your lady?" Claire's blush deepened, but she didn't correct him. 2 plates of steaming carne asada tacos were placed on the small metal counter. Claire eyed the slightly greasy surface and the flimsy paper plate with hesitation. I passed her a fresh set of plastic cutlery from the dispenser. "Trust me, it's better than that $15,000 wine." She looked at me, then finally picked up a taco. She took a bite, and her eyes widened in surprise. And then I watched as the cool, composed, Ice Queen CEO of Sterling Enterprises, standing in the dusty lot under the rumble of passing traffic, devoured 3 tacos without saying a word, a little bit of salsa dripping down her chin. When she was done, she let out a small, satisfied sigh, a happy glow on her face. In that moment, I thought she was kind of adorable. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Frank. Did you handle business? Get over here now. I've got a 20-pounder on the line. Attached was a photo of a massive largemouth bass, glistening under a headlamp. I showed the phone to Claire. She looked at the picture, then back at me, and a real, genuine laugh escaped her lips. It was the first time I had ever seen her truly smile at me. It was like watching a glacier melt in the spring sun. To make amends, the Kensingtons sent over a new partnership agreement first thing the next morning. The terms were so favorable they were practically groveling. Chad Kensington came in person, his face bruised and swollen, and gave me a stiff, 90-degree bow of apology in front of Claire's office. He looked pathetic. Shortly after, an official memo was circulated. Jack Rivers, was promoted to special assistant to the CEO, reporting directly to Claire. The office gossip did a complete 180. The people who called me a gold digger were now whispering that I must be a secret heir from a rival dynasty. The ones who said I was climbing the corporate ladder were now certain it was Claire's one true love. The most ridiculous rumor was that I was Frank Sterling's long-lost illegitimate son, finally home to claim my birthright. I had become a corporate celebrity, the center of attention wherever I went. But this kind of status, earned through connections, made my skin crawl. The real test came quickly. The company had a notoriously difficult potential client, a self-made logistics mogul named Mr. Vance. He was a multimillionaire, and more importantly, a die-hard fishing fanatic. Our team had been trying to land his massive contract for 6 months, with zero success. Vance dismissed all our proposals as academic nonsense from people who didn't understand what hard work and passion really meant. Even Claire had been personally rebuffed by him. During a tense project meeting where Claire was again lamenting the stalled deal, I stood up. Ms. Sterling, let me take a shot at him. The entire conference room went quiet. The project director frowned. Jack, you're new to this. You don't understand. Mr. Vance is impossible to deal with. A VP added snidely. Ambition is one thing, kid, but don't think a little pull with the boss can solve every problem. This is the big leagues. It takes real skill. I ignored them, my eyes fixed on Claire. She held my gaze for a few seconds, then nodded. Fine. You have 3 days. I didn't take a briefcase, a contract, or even a PowerPoint presentation. The only thing I brought was a small, sealed container of my most prized possession, a batch of my custom-formulated, ultra-potent catfish bait, nicknamed the catfish candy. I drove straight to Mr. Vance's private estate, which featured a massive, well-stocked private lake. When I found him, he was sitting by the water, sighing in frustration. A row of the most expensive fishing rods money could buy lay beside him, but his net was empty. Mr. Vance, I said by way of greeting. He glanced at me, recognized me as someone from Sterling Enterprises, and scowled. Here, you to talk business? Forget it. I'm in no mood today. I'm not here to talk business, I smiled. I'm here to fish. I opened my bait container. A unique, pungent aroma wafted out. Vance's nose twitched. His eyes widened slightly. What? What kind of bait is that? A family secret. I didn't elaborate. I just baited my hook, found my spot, and cast out. Less than 3 minutes later, my bobber vanished. I set the hook. Fish on. A 5-pound channel cat was on the bank moments later. Vance's jaw dropped. For the next 2 hours, I didn't say a single word about contracts or proposals. I just fished, and I kept catching fish one after another, filling my net until it was overflowing. Vance went from shocked to impressed to outright reverent. He eventually pulled up a stool next to me, asking questions like an eager student taking notes on my technique. As the sun began to set, Vance looked at my 2 massive nets, filled to the brim with his prized fish, and grabbed my hand, shaking it vigorously. Jack, my boy, you're a magician. I've been fishing this lake for 3 years and never had a day like this. He looked me in the eye. The contract. You got it. Not only will I sign, I'll sign a 3-year exclusive strategic partnership. He even tried to insist we become blood brothers, an offer I politely declined. By the time I returned to the office with the signed contract, it was dark. In the conference room, the executives who had been waiting for me to fail looked at the signature on the dotted line, their expressions a perfect picture of disbelief and humiliation. I placed the contract on Claire's desk. Mission accomplished. Claire looked at me, her eyes shining with a light I'd never seen before. It was a look of pure, unadulterated admiration. She finally believed that I was more than just her father's fishing buddy. Jack Rivers, had skills of my own. That night, I got a text from Frank. It was an angry face emoji, followed by a message dripping with jealousy. "You little punk. You had better bait, and you didn't get it to me first? Don't mean nothing to you." I smiled and typed back, "Next time, Frank. I promise." 08 life suddenly was good. My relationship with Claire, ever since the fishing and food truck incidents, had shifted into something new and undefined. At the office, she was still the decisive, commanding CEO, but sometimes her gaze would linger on me with a newfound warmth. But peace is a fragile thing. Chad Kensington had not taken his public humiliation gracefully. He channeled all of his rage and resentment toward me and Claire. A plot against Sterling Enterprises was already in motion. First, the company's stock price began to fluctuate unpredictably. Then, several of our key material suppliers, partners we'd worked with for years, simultaneously breached their contracts, citing flimsy excuses. Our entire production pipeline ground to a halt. Before we could even react to that crisis, another one hit. A series of articles and posts exploded online with sensational headlines. Shocking. Ice Queen CEO's affair with subordinate. Is it love or a promotion ploy? Deep dive. Millionaire heiress keeps boy toy on payroll. Turns company into personal harem. The posts included secretly taken photos. A cleverly angled shot of me talking to Claire in her car that night, making it look like we were kissing. A picture of us at the food truck, spun as CEO slums it for love, sharing cheap meal with her kept man. The story went viral. The stock plummeted. Claire was summoned to an emergency board meeting. The same board members who usually kowtowed to her were now grave and sanctimonious, demanding answers. One of them even moved to have her removed as CEO. I knew, without a doubt, that Chad Kensington was behind it all. This was his revenge, designed to burn us both to the ground. He sent a message through a third party. If Claire agreed to marry him, the Kensington family would not only solve the supplier crisis, but also use their media influence to kill the story. The pressure on Claire was immense. To protect me from the fallout, she placed me on a mandatory leave of absence, telling me to stay home and wait for the storm to pass. As I packed up my desk, I could feel dozens of eyes on me, a mix of pity, scorn, and morbid curiosity. I didn't go home. I got in my beat-up old sedan and drove straight to Frank Sterling's Fortress of Solitude, a massive private fishing club he owned out in the suburbs. I found him in the courtyard, calmly sharpening a fishing hook on a whetstone. The steel glinted in the afternoon sun. He looked up as I approached, completely unsurprised. "You're here." "Yeah." I handed him my phone, showing him the slanderous articles and the nosediving stock chart. "Frank, they can say whatever they want about me," I said, looking him in the eye. "But they're not going to do this to Claire." The smile on Frank's face slowly vanished. He put down the hook and took the phone, scrolling through the venomous posts and photos, his expression growing darker with each one. The courtyard was terrifyingly quiet. After a long time, he handed the phone back to me and suddenly broke into a grin. It was a grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "Good? Very good." He stood up and stretched, his joints popping like a string of firecrackers. "Guess it's been too long. These little punks have forgotten how I used to deal with their fathers back in the day." A palpable aura of menace rolled off him. "Frank," I said, my voice steady and my eyes locked on his. "This time, let's play for keeps. Let's take them all down. At once." 09 The news that I had been suspended spread like wildfire. The consensus was that my protector had abandoned me, and I was finished. I began my performance. I played the part of the disgraced, bitter ex-lover perfectly. I started showing up at dive bars, getting sloppy drunk, and loudly complaining to anyone who would listen about how Claire Sterling had used me and thrown me away. It didn't take long for Chad Kensington's spies to report my pathetic state back to him. A week later, I got a call from a blocked number. It was Chad. "Jack, feel like getting some revenge." His voice was slick with temptation. "Ow!" I slurred into the phone, pretending to be wasted. "Do something for me, and I'll give you $10 million. "What is it?" Give me the core data files for Sterling's new green energy project. The fish had taken the bait. I played the part of a greedy, vengeful burnout, haggling with him until we settled on 15 million. Every word of our conversation was being recorded by Frank's people. Meanwhile, Claire was playing her own part. At a board meeting, she staged a massive meltdown over the supplier crisis, throwing a water glass against the wall and appearing to be on the verge of a complete breakdown. To the outside world, Sterling Enterprises looked like it was about to implode. Behind the scenes, Frank had assembled his old crew, a group of unassuming old guys who looked like they did nothing but fish and play cards were, in reality, former titans of industry, legal eagles, and political fixers. An invisible net was closing. Money, media, connections, everything was being moved into place. The exchange was set for a deserted, windswept pier on the industrial outskirts of the city. It was the perfect place for fishing, or for making someone disappear. I arrived alone, as instructed. Chad showed up a few minutes later with a couple of beefy bodyguards, a triumphant smirk on his face. "Where is it?" I tossed him a USB drive. He plugged it into a laptop, his eyes scanning the files. They were fakes I had created, but they were good enough to pass a cursory inspection. A greedy, ecstatic grin spread across his face. "You really are a good little dog, Jack. Don't worry, you'll get your money." Believing he had already won, he started to gloat. "That stupid bitch. Did she really think I liked her?" The only reason I gave her the time of day was to get my hands on her family's assets. And those pictures online. Masterful, weren't they? How are the best paparazzi money can buy. The plan was to ruin her reputation so badly that her old man would have no choice but to marry her off to me to save face. Once I control the Sterling fortune, the first thing I'm doing is getting rid of pathetic losers like you. He laid out his entire conspiracy step by step, and my tie-clip camera and microphone captured every single word. I listened, a humble, greedy smile plaster on my face, right up until he said his last word. Then my smile changed. "You really shouldn't bite on every lure you see, Chad." My words, and my sudden change in demeanor, made him pause. He didn't understand. And then, the entire pier was flooded with light as the high beams of a dozen black sedans switched on at once, surrounding us completely. Doors opened, and Frank Sterling, dressed in a sharp black suit, stepped out of the lead car, flanked by his crew of old fishermen. With them were several people in official jackets, identifying them as agents from the FBI's white-collar crime division. The color drained from Chad Kensington's face. He looked at me, then at the circle of cars, his mind finally catching up. You set me up." I shrugged. All's fair in love and fishing. The agents stepped forward, flashing their badges. "Chadwick Kensington, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit industrial espionage, stock market manipulation, and defamation." The cold steel of handcuffs snapped around his wrists. He was dragged away, whimpering like a kicked dog. 10. The Kensington empire crumbled. With Chad arrested on multiple federal charges and his father implicated, their corporation, already over-leveraged, collapsed into bankruptcy. The crisis at Sterling Enterprises vanished overnight. Better yet, Claire, acting on inside information from our operation, moved quickly to acquire Kensington's most valuable assets at pennies on the dollar. Sterling Enterprises didn't just recover. It expanded, its stock price soaring to an all-time high. Claire's position as CEO was now unassailable. At the company's victory party, I was the guest of honor. The same executives who had scorned me now lined up to shake my hand, their faces plastered with fawning smiles. I navigated the crowd, my eyes searching for Claire. I found her by the window, a glass of champagne in her hand, watching me. Her expression was a mix of pride, gratitude, and something I had never seen there before, affection. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and in that silent moment, everything was said. After the party, Frank summoned me to his study. This time, there was no fish to cook, no bourbon to drink. The atmosphere was serious. I started to get nervous. This felt like the "what are your intentions with my daughter" talk. "Kid." Frank sat in a large leather armchair, studying me. "You did good. It was all you, Frank. You orchestrated everything." I said quickly. "Cut the crap," he grunted. "You helped my family out of a big jam. But that doesn't mean my daughter is up for grabs. Here we go." I swallowed hard. "Sir, whatever you ask. I'll do it." Frank looked at my nervous face and suddenly broke into a grin. It's nothing that dramatic. He stood and took two magnificent, custom-made fishing rods down from a wall mount. Tomorrow, the reservoir. Me and you, one-on-one. Huh, I was completely lost. The target is Old Man Willie, the legendary 60-pound blue catfish that lives in the deep channel. Frank's eyes burned with competitive fire. If you can land him, I'll give you my blessing to date Claire. If you can't, he paused for dramatic effect. You will address me as Mr. Sterling for the rest of your life. A huge wave of relief washed over me. This I could do. The next day was bright and sunny. On the banks of the reservoir, a fishing duel of epic proportions was underway. On one side, the retired tycoon, Frank Sterling. On the other, the humble special assistant, me. The sole judge and spectator was Claire. She stood behind me with a parasol, handing me water bottles and dabbing the sweat from my brow. Her bias could not have been more obvious. Frank, watching from 20 feet away, grumbled under his breath and started sneakily throwing pebbles into my fishing spot. Dad, that's cheating. Claire busted him immediately. Frank's face turned red. I was testing the current, he blustered. We fished from morning until late afternoon. We both caught plenty, but the legendary Old Man Willie was nowhere to be found. Just as I was about to give up, my rod suddenly bent double, the tip plunging violently toward the water. The drag on my reel screamed. It was him. A jolt of adrenaline shot through me as the battle began. The creature on the other end of the line was immensely powerful, pulling my line deep into the reservoir. I couldn't risk fighting it head-on. I had to play the long game, letting it run, then reeling it back, slowly tiring it out. Frank reeled in his own line and came to stand beside me, shouting advice, more invested in my fight than he had been in his own. Hold him steady. Don't let him get into the weeds. Let him run. Tire him out. Claire was cheering me on from the bank. The struggle between man and fish lasted for nearly 30 minutes. My arms ached, and my shirt was soaked with sweat. Finally, I felt the creature's resistance weaken. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to pull a massive, dark shadow toward the shore. It was Old Man Willie. When that fish, a monster catfish thicker than my leg, was finally beached, the way Frank Sterling looked at me changed forever. It went from the fond appreciation of an elder for a younger man to the pure, unadulterated reverence of one master angler for another. He slapped me on the back, roaring with laughter. You magnificent bastard. I'm impressed. I am truly and completely impressed. He was a man of his word. I looked at Claire, who was beaming, her face flushed with excitement. I decided to press my advantage. Holding the still-thrashing 60-pound catfish in my arms, I dropped to one knee. It was not the most graceful proposal in history. Claire, I said, looking up at her with as much seriousness as I could muster while wrestling a giant fish. The fish is yours. And I'm yours too, if you'll have me. Her face turned a brilliant shade of crimson. She didn't speak. Instead, as Frank yelled, "Oh, for crying out loud," in the background, she leaned down and pressed her lips to mine. Her kiss was soft and sweet. Frank covered his eyes, peeking through his fingers. I can't watch this. I just can't watch. My prize flower, plucked by a damn fisherman. We were official. I became the de facto prince consort of Sterling Enterprises. But the label of the guy who married the boss's daughter still followed me. I didn't want to spend my life in Claire and Frank's shadow. After a long talk one night, I told Claire I was resigning. I need to build something of my own. She didn't argue. She just held me close and whispered, I support you. Whatever you do, I will always be your biggest investor and your #1 fan. I used the black card Frank had given me, combined with the incredible network of his fishing buddies, to open an exclusive, high-end angling club in the city. It was a one-stop shop for custom gear, expert workshops, and access to private, stocked waters. On opening day, the parking lot was filled with the cars of a who's who of Chicago's business and political elite. To outsiders, it looked like they were all there to pay respect to Frank Sterling. Only I knew the truth. They were all there to get their hands on my catfish candy bait. The club was an instant, massive success, quickly becoming the new hot spot for power brokers to network and relax. With my own 2 hands, I had proven my business acumen. No one called me a freeloader anymore. When they saw me, they called me Mr. Rivers. Claire's favorite thing to do after work was to come to the club and watch me, a quiet smile on her face as I taught a client the finer points of fly casting. A man is most attractive when he's passionate about what he does, she'd say. Our relationship, free from the confines of corporate hierarchy, deepened into something comfortable, equal, and profound. And Frank Sterling became my #1 customer, showing up every single day to inspect his son-in-law's business, which was just a flimsy excuse to get free bait. Life was, against all odds, perfect. A year later, Claire and I had a beautiful wedding. The guest list was a testament to my strange new life. Half were titans of industry. The other half were my fishing buddies. The anglers looked on with a mixture of pride and profound jealousy as I, the former nobody, married the woman of my dreams. I heard that Chad Kensington saw the wedding announcement from prison and had a complete breakdown. During the reception toasts, Frank took the microphone and announced he had a shocking secret to reveal. The room fell silent. The truth is, Frank said with a dramatic pause, that first night, I was never going to let this kid in my house. A murmur went through the crowd. But then, he continued, a sly grin spreading across his face. I saw the corner of a little plastic baggie sticking out of his backpack, and I recognized it as the legendary, impossible-to-find catfish candy bait I'd been trying to get my hands on for years. That's the only reason I let him in. The room erupted in laughter. Claire, blushing furiously, pinched my side. "Is that right, Jack Rivers?" she whispered fiercely. "So, I'm only worth 1 bag of fish bait to you." I took her hand and leaned in close. "It was a priceless, one-of-kind, legendary bag of bait," I whispered back. "Just like you." Married life was blissful. 2 years later, Claire got pregnant. Frank was even more excited than I was, immediately commissioning a set of miniature, custom-built fishing rods. He was determined to train the 3rd generation of Sterling fishing masters. Sometimes I think back to that night that changed everything. Me, standing on that doorstep, terrified, expecting the worst, only to find a door opening into a world I never could have imagined. Life is a lot like fishing. You cast your line into the unknown, and you never know what you'll pull up. It could be a big fish, a lucky break, or a badass, lovable, and completely obsessed father-in-law. In the warm glow of the setting sun, I sit by the river with my family. Claire, her belly round and full, and the proud grandfather-to-be, Frank Sterling. The water is calm, the air is peaceful. The old man is still the same old man. But I'm no longer the scared kid who stumbled into his life. I am Jack Rivers, and with 1 fishing rod, I managed to catch my entire world.